Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the people management platform for hospitality teams. With its intuitive drag-and-drop rota planner and built-in budgeting tools, RotaCloud users spend an average of 66% less time on staffing-related admin, leaving them with more time to spend with their customers, train staff, or simply take a well-earned break. Head over to rotacloud.com/Phil to explore RotaCloud's full range of tools and features and sign up for your 30-day free trial. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is none other than Masterchef The Professionals 2022 champion, Nikita Pathakji. Coming up on today's show, Nikita describes Phil's dream scenario.
Yeah, just eating and meeting people.
Phil gets acquainted with the kitchen. What's this big metal thing with a stick? Oh, it's a pan. And we learn how close we were to a different outcome to Masterchef The Professionals 2022.
I had the application ready for weeks and then I pressed submit at 10 p.m. before the deadline.
All that and so much more as we chat through Nikita's journey so far. I was lucky enough to meet Nikita earlier in the year at HRC, and I can honestly say a nicer, more humble human you will not meet. There's so much more to Nikita than being the winner of Masterchef The Professionals, and there are some great lessons in here from her. A huge thank you to her for taking time out of her schedule to chat with me. One final thing before we get into it, and I know I go on about this, but if you can take 2 secs to subscribe to the show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, it really makes a huge difference. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Nikita Pathakji.
Hi Phil, how are you?
I'm alright, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Where do we find you today?
I'm in Cornwall at the moment actually, just on a little family break.
Nice. I suppose for those who are not aware, I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point in the conversation, but obviously you were the most recent winner of MasterChef The Professionals. A huge congratulations on that. What an amazing journey that was. But I'd imagine that the break is probably very, very welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Last year was amazing, but my summer was so hectic. And this year's the same, but in a different way. And I get to choose my own time a bit more. So I'm definitely enjoying the bit of a break.
Excellent. Okay, well, I mean, let's just get straight to it. Just tell the world who you are and what you're currently doing.
So after winning MasterChef, there have been loads and loads of opportunities. And as I was a Junior Sous Chef in my last position, I'm really enjoying doing loads of events and pop-ups all around England and showcasing my food. And it's been an incredible experience. And it's so much more rewarding than I ever imagined, being able to cook your own food for the first time. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we'll absolutely delve into that as we go. I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning now of your life and career. How did you get into hospitality in the first place?
So, I mean, it was a complete U-turn from what anything in my family have ever done. What my initial plan was, I was in school doing A-levels. I was studying maths, physics, and chemistry. The plan was to go to university and study chemistry. And I think it was about 3 months before my final exams. And I did like a small internal test and it went really badly. So I had a little bit of a breakdown. And then my sister texted me from her uni. She was studying chemical engineering. And she said, I'd sent her some brownies. And she was like, these are amazing. You're really good at this. Don't go to university because it's really hard. Do what you want to do. She just knew that I was already struggling and I would struggle so much more at university because it's another big step up. And so I had a little cry and I sat on my bed and I told my dad that I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go and study chemistry. And I think he was relieved, actually.
Really? Well,
yeah.
These are sliding doors moments, aren't they? These moments in your life whereby it could go one of two ways, really.
Absolutely, and I have such an academic family, but at the end of the day, they're ambitious. So once I said I didn't want to go to university, he was like, okay, great. I see that. I see you're not happy, but you need to make a decision. You can't just sort of not have a goal.
Drift.
So what do you want to do?
Yeah,
they wouldn't be happy with me sort of drifting. But what do you want to do? What do you love to do? And the answer's always been cooking or traveling, but it's easier to make a career out of cooking.
Yeah,
So
indeed. When you figured out the traveling element, just let me know how you do it, because yeah, for sure.
absolutely. I was in a fortunate situation in that my mum lived in London. So I grew up in Derby with my dad, and obviously in Derby, the place to be for food was London. So I did my A levels, I finished them, had a backup plan. And then I moved to London and applied for an apprenticeship, and that was it.
Right, right. And where did you land on the apprenticeship?
So I went to Westminster Kingsway College,
Yep,
and my first job was at the Lanesborough Hotel, which was incredible.
that's not a bad
And it was a
start.
great, it was really good. And so, I mean, my first job though was making finger sandwiches. So it wasn't really what I was expecting. I was expecting to be, in a kitchen in service, but you have to start at the bottom.
Yeah,
And I was, making sandwiches day in, day out, 4 days a week, 1 day at college. But I was really learning what it is to be a chef there. And I was so keen to get, at the time they had a Michelin star restaurant in the hotel. And so I was so keen to get there. So what I would do is I'd rush through all of my jobs, and then I'd just go and hang out in the kitchen,
right.
basically annoy the other chefs until they'd just be like, well, you're here, like, just
Do
peel
something.
this for me, or just do, you're here. So that exactly. I never left on time because I would rather just sort of hang out and watch what they were doing.
Yeah. So
And it
at this,
worked.
yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, was there already this kind of drive within you that you thought, right, that's, I mean, yeah, okay, I'm making finger sandwiches, and that's, it's not, I suppose, the highest skilled of all the chefing jobs, but it's no less important, because obviously Afternoon Tea is an absolute institution in this country. But yeah, were you beginning to at this point realize that actually I really want to get into that proper fine dining environment?
Absolutely. It was always the goal. I knew I couldn't just walk straight into it. Actually, having been in hospitality now, I feel like I could have just walked straight into it. But being back then, I thought, I have to work my way up a bit more. So,
But I
so
think that's
I
good
would,
though, right? That's a good
I
mentality
think
to
so.
have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I did learn a lot from there. I mean, it made me quick because I wanted to rush through my job so that I could, but it didn't mean my standards could slip because everything was still being checked and it was being served out of the Michelin star restaurant. So they had to be good sandwiches.
Yeah.
And I would just pester my head chef every week or so, like, chef, when can I move on to the next section? And he said, when you mastered the art of sandwich making. I was like, what does that mean? But it worked eventually, and I got moved into the main kitchen, and then eventually I went upstairs to the Michelin starred
Right.
restaurant.
Okay. So yeah, well, describe the feeling of that then when they said, "Okay, you're ready now," because this is like a Karate Kid moment, isn't it? Sort of, I've done the training, now throw me into the deep end.
I was just so happy. I think I knew I was ready, and I could see through the once you've mastered the art into more of a, we need you here because of staffing
Right.
sort of thing. I was green, but I wasn't stupid. So I knew that, there was a little bit of, we kind of just need to have you here until a point. But I was thrilled. And I got to do all of the sections in the hotel. So I went into the hot kitchen doing banqueting and room service. And then I went into the pastry of the hotel, which was such a massive section at the time. I mean, that was afternoon tea, but there's a difference between making the little beautiful pastries as compared to the sandwiches. That was far more exciting, and I learned so much there. And then eventually got into I went from there into the pastry section of the Michelin star kitchen, and then into the kitchen, and that was my end goal. That was like, this is where I want to be.
Right. So were you clear that you wanted to, I suppose, rather than maybe specialize in something like pastry, that you actually wanted to be in the kind of the melting pot of day-to-day service and delivering, fine cooking through starters and mains as opposed to desserts, as it were?
I wanted to learn everything. So I was very happy to be in the pastry section, but I wanted to be trained across all the sections, because I think I could potentially get bored quite quickly. So having the flexibility to move around and do everything helps with that, rather than just staying on one section. Because pastry is amazing, but I think personally I would get bored if I just stayed on the one section.
Yeah. So just something clicked in my head around the fact that you were studying with a kind of view to maybe go into chemistry. And actually, cooking is chemistry, right? When you break it down into its individual components and why stuff reacts a certain way and why it tastes a certain way when you do that particular technique and all of that. So actually, you've filled your early goal.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, I find it easier, probably because I'm better at it than I ever was in chemistry.
Yeah.
But there's definitely science in cooking, and it's I am able to understand it, which does help, I think, when it comes to certain techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you're making progress at the Lanesborough. You're still on an apprenticeship at this point, or are you now actually fully fledged? No, okay, so you're still on an apprenticeship. So how did that progress from there?
So I was in the Michelin star kitchen. I was on the garnish section. I was having an amazing time. I loved my head chef, my team. They were just properly looked after me, and it was a amazing place to work. And then I went for dinner with my family at Bibendum, and I knew one of the sommeliers, and so they were like, "Do you want to work here?" And I was like, yes, yes, please. Because my like 19-year-old brain was like, 2 stars, two stars, absolutely, yes, please.
Well, and one of the biggest names in the business as well, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, we ate there and it was incredible. So I resigned, and honestly it broke my heart. I loved working there so much, but it was an opportunity I just couldn't say no to. So I moved to Bibendum, and I started on the pastry section, which was, Claude Bossy is like the king of souffles now. He somehow made it his.
Right. Okay.
And
he's got to have to write a book now called "The King of Souffles."
Well, it's just they've somehow made it their signature. I mean, It's always on the menu, and that as a chef is such an intimidating thing to do. But I spent a lot of time doing it, so it was one of those.
You're pretty comfortable with your souffles.
I'm pretty comfortable with a souffle now. A sweet souffle. Savoury is a whole different game.
All right. Well, chemistry again, I suppose the ingredients react in different ways, and
sugar's an amazing stabilizer, and that's why as soon as you take that out, it becomes so much more challenging.
Well, there we are. This is an educational podcast now as well.
So, I learned my whole pastry sort of career was fulfilled there. I felt like we made everything, puff pastry, bread. We did everything there. So it was really incredible. I think my challenge there was that I then wanted to leave pastry because I spent a year on it and I wanted to, but I wasn't able to in that restaurant.
Right.
Basically because they didn't have the staff to move me off the section. I was well trained in it, and they were like, well, we need to keep you there. Yeah, but I finished my apprenticeship there, so I did 2 years in total.
Right.
And it was incredible.
I mean, wow, like one Michelin star and then two Michelin stars start to your career in terms of the learning experience must have been off the charts.
It was definitely deep end because whilst I learned so much and it was incredible, it was also very, very tough.
Yeah.
For a first sort of job. Yeah. Lots of challenges.
But tough is, I think, it's a good, how to put this? It's a good thing to get your head around quickly in your career, because I think actually all of the golden stuff happens on the other side of tough, right? Just in terms of a lot of people will take a moment that feels like it's tough and go, I can't do that. I'm good, and just not push through. But actually, if you do push through, look at the skill set that you get through the other side of that.
I think if it's tough, but you're still learning, that's where then it's a good kind of tough. I think if it's tough and you're not learning, that's when it's a that's when it can become a problem. But yeah, I was still learning so much there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I suppose they weren't able to move you into new sections, so you're moving on at this point to broaden your horizons.
Yeah, and also, I'm 20 maybe at this point.
Okay.
I've been living with my mum. I've been working pretty much full time. I know it's 4 days a week, but those are 17-hour days. So
Yeah.
I've got money saved up. I I love traveling. So it felt like the time. So I'm going to leave this job and I'm going to take 3 months. I had a trip planned with my family to India, so cancelled my flight home and booked a flight from India to Thailand. And I decided I was going to go traveling for 3 months. And 3 months went by, and that turned into 9.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine why. I mean, it's a part of the world that really has no food background. There's nothing going on out there, is there?
Yeah, I mean, I had planned such a tight itinerary for the 3 months. I was going to hit like 7 countries, and then I ended up spending an entire month in Thailand, and then like not wanting to leave Vietnam. So it was just so easy, and it was cheap. Once you're there, it's very cheap to just continue on.
Maneuvering around.
Yeah, just eating and meeting people, and it was just the most incredible experience. And yeah, I did it at the right time because I'm ambitious, so my career is my focus. But then it was the right time for me to then take that time out
Yeah.
to focus on my other passion, which is traveling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also it's such an enriching experience, isn't it? Just in terms of what it brings to you. It's very difficult to put it into words what traveling and seeing different cultures and the way that people do things differently to what you're kind of brought up with yourself, and then what that brings to you. I think it just certainly brought to me a real more level-headedness, really, around when you just see the world, rather than what that little piece of the world that's just in front of your eyes.
Yeah, and you meet people who are so vastly different to you, but because you're in the same situation, experiencing the same things, you somehow find some way to relate to them.
Yeah.
And you learn so much about other people from that. And you also learn to be on your own. So I went on my own, which has its own challenges, but it's also so incredibly freeing because you can be selfish. You can be completely selfish. Just think about yourself, and that's something that rarely happens in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. It's not a negative thing as well. I mean, the idea of being selfish has negative connotations, right? But actually, every good thing that happens in your life happens because you look after yourself first. And I don't mean that for the sake of other people, but actually, you've got to do what sings to you, what makes you happy, all of these basic things, basic in word terms at least, but actually what they do for you, all the good stuff, all the really, really good stuff happens on the backside of you being selfish, looking after yourself, giving yourself what you need to flourish.
Definitely. And yeah, having that time to do that and just to worry about the one person is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you went there obviously with travel in mind. I'm assuming that food was going to play a part here as well.
I travel for food, so it's the focus. And so, if you ask me my favorite countries that I visited, they were the ones that had the best food, in my opinion, and they're the places I spent the most time at. The other big passion I developed was scuba diving. I got
Right.
my PADI license when I was there, so that became a bit of a rival in the sense that I've always loved water, and then getting to breathe underwater for the first time was the most exciting thing. And then, yeah, I did like nearly 50 dives
Wow.
in that trip. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But definitely food focused. Every country I went to, I would do the research, find the best places, which were usually, hole in the wall sort of. I had to look it up and able to find it because otherwise it would be purely accidental.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? A lot of tourism, if you like, it's very easy to find restaurants, but is it where you really want to go and learn about the craft of the cuisine of the country that you're in? And more often than not, it's the little restaurant down a back street somewhere that that doesn't make it onto TripAdvisor or whatever, that actually is giving you the heart and soul of what the country's cooking is all about, or the region of that country that you're in at that time, because there's obviously vast differences from one region to the next.
Yeah, especially with places like Thailand, which is so intensely traveled by backpackers. There are so many places that you can go, but they're all, designed for tourists. So that's where I would then do my research, because I wanted to find the places, and I'm also not willing to, just wander on my own around all the back alleys, because that's not necessarily safe.
No, that's
so
fair.
I felt much better just going on all the sort of food blogs and cross-referencing, being like, okay, it was cited here. It must have something that I should go there, and it really works. I ate the most amazing food. I would say Thailand is one of the top places in Southeast Asia for food for me. Yeah. It's just so varied.
I couldn't agree with you more. My favourite region of the world. They're in Japan, probably a little
Japan. Bit. Yeah, absolutely. I did Japan, but a few years before. But in terms of budget, it was far easier in Thailand to eat well.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what, at this point in time, what do you think this experience of travel and experiencing all of these different places is bringing to you as a chef? Because I suppose at this point you're still very early in your chef career. Have you identified your style yet, or what really sings to you, or do you think all of this is kind of speaking to that journey and helping kind of, I suppose, craft that out?
At the time, I don't think I realised it, but it was definitely crafting what my style would be. I didn't have one yet. I was learning classical techniques, which is so valuable.
Yeah.
And then when I went travelling, I learned what I love to eat, because they're not necessarily the same things. What I find stimulating at work and what I just love to sit down and enjoy are kind of different things. So it was definitely learning, but it wasn't until later on that I really brought that in from traveling into what I was learning at work.
Right. Yeah, I hear you on that, because we had Cherish Finden on the show a long time ago, obviously pastry chef extraordinaire. And I remember her saying to me, which kind of dumbfounded me, that her favourite thing to eat is beans on toast. And, with a glass of rosé in front of the telly, it's just one of her favourite things. And so I get the point that actually what stimulates you at work versus what you actually, what stimulates your belly, as it were, can be very far removed.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where I'm learning to be careful as a chef, is that I want to obviously make food that is stimulating for me at work, but I don't want to lose sight of the thing that I find delicious, because then you're not cooking for the guests. I think you're cooking for your creative ego rather than what's going to make people the most happy. And so that's where I'm learning to find the balance between the two.
Brilliant. Okay, so travel came to a close. 9 months, 6 months longer than you had planned. Was there a moment where you were traveling where you thought, right, I've got to crack on with my career again now?
Yeah, I think so. And also, it is a long time to be away from home, and it is exhausting. And I think it was when I went to Borneo, and which is incredible, but a lot less touristy, and a lot more, I guess it's less backpackery. There's more sort of families and couples going on holiday. So that's where I started to feel, I guess, a bit lonely. And yeah, it felt like the right time. It had been 9 months and my family were back in India. So I flew back to India to meet them there.
Right.
And spend time with them, and then came home. And yeah, it was a natural closure.
Yeah. So arrival back in the UK, back to London, I assume?
Back to London. I definitely took Christmas to enjoy in England, because it was so close. I didn't want to throw myself straight away into into work at Christmas time. So I took that time off as well, which was great. And then I applied. Then I had two restaurants in mind, two very different restaurants. As a female, I was obsessed with working at Called by Claire Smith.
Right. I
And then
can understand why.
and then so I thought, okay, so that's where I'm going to apply. And if that doesn't work out, my other obsession was Phil Howard. So Ellison Street is where my brain went.
Right.
So I was like, well, let's go to the 2-star first, because that's still how my brain worked. I wanted to go for the top 2 Michelin star restaurant, now 3, and I got a job. As I've learned, it's actually not that difficult to get the job. It's much harder to keep the job.
Right. Okay. This sounds like this is the voice of experience here.
And that was the toughest job I've ever had.
Right. Okay. Was it tough because you were, I don't know, out of your depth, or it was just too much to learn, or what? Why was it a problem place at that time?
I think for me, it was that I wasn't necessarily passionate about the job that I was doing.
Right.
So I was on the starter section, and there was a lot of things to do with flowers and herbs and foraging, and I spent a year doing it, and I felt not able to progress past that part, which wasn't exciting to me.
Yeah.
And it was also combined with COVID.
Okay. Right.
Because we're into 2019.
Right. Okay. Got you. I suppose, yeah. So 2019 was beginning to rear its head towards the back end of 2019, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand you've got to be engaged with what you're doing, right? And and if you're not immediately engaged with what you're doing, you've got to be able to see a path to get to the place that gets you engaged. And if you can't see those things, then it's not the right time to be there.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, I could stick out the 2 years, but do I see my feelings changing after those 2 years? Probably not.
Mm.
So do I just call it and go and work at the other place that I had in mind? And at this point, I think I was learning that, okay, Michelin is amazing, but is it what I am truly passionate about? Maybe not. Maybe I just want to cook really tasty, impactful food that is in the style of fine dining that makes people happy. I was falling out of love with like the whole concept of Michelin, to be honest.
Yeah.
Whilst it's an amazing achievement for anyone, I was starting to learn that maybe I don't need to chase them.
Yeah, but I think that's that's probably the golden moment that you might look back on in your career in 10 years' time and go, you know, that realization. Because I think if you speak to a lot of chefs who happen to have a Michelin star, they never set out to do that. I mean, yes, of course, there are some restaurants like there's no doubt in my mind that Claire Smith is shooting for 3 Michelin stars. You know, having had them and maintained them so long at Royal Hospital Road, and then to have her own name above the door, you know, that would have been a goal for
Absolutely.
sure. But, you know, the vast majority of chefs who are just really passionate about what they do, I think, and I might be wrong, but I think that they just do what they love to do. And if the accolade comes, then great. But it's not about pursuing the accolade. It's just about doing, as you said, it's about creating food that's incredibly delicious, that makes people happy, that, you know, gets people leaving your space feeling like they want to tell the world that they've just, you know, had the most amazing meal ever. And if a Michelin star comes with that, great. But if not, it's not the end of the world.
And I think that frame of mind is becoming increasingly popular sort of with chefs. I think more and more chefs are sort of not so much focused on the star and just creating food. And that's why you have a boom in the more sort of casual style dining with really, really tasty food. And that was something that I learned about myself from working there.
Yeah.
So I went to Phil Howard because, you know, he had the square.
I mean, he's not a terrible chef.
He's my favourite book. The Square was my Bible.
I've got that too. It's a cracker.
Yeah.
Do you know what, as well,
And
when he brought that book out, I think the whole world at the time had been asking, "Come on, Phil, please do a book." And God, it didn't disappoint.
No, not at all. I use it to this day. I mean, it's just an absolute, it's my reference book for anything. So yeah, I did a stage at Ellison Street first. This is again COVID-y time. So I was planning on doing like a full sort of month stage, but it got cut at like 4 days because we
Right.
went into another lockdown. And then sort of coming out of that lockdown, I saw advertisements for hiring chefs across all three of his restaurants. And I was like, well, I mean, I wanted to give it longer because I wanted to make sure it was the right environment for me and all this other stuff. But again, the opportunity was there and I couldn't help myself.
A very quick word, if you'll permit me. Providing great customer service is all about having the right people in the right place at the right time. And that's exactly where our sponsor RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud makes managing your team's rotas, attendance and annual leave easy. With its simple drag and drop planner, you'll be creating rotas for your team in minutes. While its built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. One RotaCloud customer actually reported that they'd gone from spending 25% on their monthly turnover on wages to spending just 19%, all thanks to RotaCloud's intuitive rota planning software. So do your business a favour and head over to rotacloud.com/Phil to start your 30-day free trial and find out how much easier organising your team can be. Now let's get back to it.
So I applied, did my trial shift, which was again, it's sort of in COVID. So we were really just sort of reorganising the dry store more than there were no guests. There were no guests.
That was your trial shift. Can you take can you take that ingredient and just put it over there?
It was just chatting basically with the sous chefs and the head chefs across the restaurants.
Right.
And while we did that, we just sort of organised a little bit.
I tell you what though, there's a lot to be said for actually, just chewing the fat with the people that you're going to work with to see if you can actually work with them.
Absolutely. I think that's why they didn't really need to see me cook. And it wasn't just me, by the way. There was like 8 of us on a trial shift.
Right.
And they were doing like a little bit of takeaway boxes. And I was so surprised because my actual interview was with Phil himself. I was like, oh, okay, this isn't, when I applied for, when I got the job at Bibendum, I didn't have an interview with Claude. Right. I was quite surprised to have and I was so intent on getting a job. I made little chocolates at home and I brought them in as a little here you go, this is the kind of thing that I do. Please enjoy. Literally.
Yeah.
And then they did offer me a job, but at Kitchen W8.
Yeah.
Which is again a Michelin star restaurant, absolutely fantastic. But like a lot of people, we seem to not know about it. Everyone knows Ellison Street.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, great. Definitely I'll take it. But I was I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like Mark Hempson, okay. But I joined and it's the best place I've worked. I mean, 1 Michelin star, had it for 13 years. And Mark Kempson, the head chef, just a brilliant teacher. And I told him, I was like, chef, if you put me on the pastry section before I've done the other ones, I will leave.
Well, set your stall out for sure.
So, just so you know, and it worked. he moved me. I did the classic route sort of on starter and then fish and then meat, all within a year. And not because he was rushing me, because I don't know, I was comfortable there and was able to absorb so much from that restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's a proper neighborhood restaurant, isn't it? Really, I mean, yes, it's a destination, but as you say, probably fallen off the radar a little bit in terms of the global knowledge of this wonderful little neighborhood restaurant that exists in W8 in London, but obviously is serving that neighborhood extremely well because it's been there for so long. It's and I've actually eaten there as well because it was actually when I came to London a long time ago now, but it took me years and years and years to understand where and what was in places. And the minute I saw that Phil Howard was behind that place, it was like, well, I have to go and try that out then. Yeah, just a wonderful, kind of relaxed fine dining experience. That was probably the best way I could have summed it up when I ate there. It was very friendly. It was very, there was no pretentiousness. It was just a lovely place to go have a really cracking meal. And we went when they were doing a truffle season special meal as well, truffle tasting menu. Oh my God.
Yeah. We still do that, or they still do that.
Yeah, cracking place.
Completely obsessed with seasonality. So there'll be a game menu, there'll be a truffle menu, there'll be a spring menu. And that's why I loved working there, because there was so much flexibility in the menu. If like we got suddenly a delivery of really beautiful white asparagus, it's on the menu that day, because why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we take advantage? And Mark was flexible enough and had so much knowledge that he could just whip on a really cracking dish just because something has been particularly beautiful that day.
Right. Yeah. Working with proper crafts people.
Yeah, absolutely. And and then just a really lovely family restaurant. When I say family, I mean the staff, and it sounds really cliche and cheesy, but it's true. Yeah, and Mark Kempson really just looked after us so well and taught. So he loves teaching, so that works for every chef, I think, who's wanting to learn.
Yeah, totally. And well, I mean, there's so much gets written about, how kitchens can be terrible places to work and blah 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 and all that, but actually, when you get somebody like that who is intent on mentoring really and developing people, but then developing them into a place whereby you're delivering exceptional food day in, day out. The kitchens can be the most amazing places to be in. And I think we need to talk more about that, because of course there are people who do things badly, but there are in any walk of life, right? I mean, in any sector, in any part of the world, there's always those who do things well and those who don't. We don't talk enough about the people who do things well in kitchens, because there's many of them. So this is a shout out to all the people who are doing stuff well in kitchens. Let's start shouting about it more.
I agree, and I think if we shout about the places that are doing really well, people will realise the places that aren't being mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And it's better to do it that way, because it's focusing on the positivity rather than something negative.
Absolutely.
So we should continue to shout about the good places.
Yeah, well, this is it. We're starting right now, today. Kitchen W8, you rock. So you were obviously there. What level were you at this point in terms of what was your official job title?
Chef de partie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he likes to hire people at that level, because even if they're not quite there yet, they're going to be running. It's a small restaurant. They're going to be running a section. So if you're going to be made into a chef de partie, because that's what they needed.
Yeah.
So I was CDP, and that's what I was when I decided to join Masterchef.
Well, that's a nice little segue. So how did that come about? Were you encouraged to do so, or was it one of these things where you just had it in you, the way you thought, do you know what, because you've said you're ambitious, right? And I mean, this is one of the probably toughest cooking competitions in the world. It's also one of the greatest things to watch on television, as somebody who's a foodie. But did it come from you, or did somebody push you?
So it was definitely family.
Okay.
They had been, specifically my mum, had been sort of trying to get me to do it for years and years and years, and I knew I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And then I got to a point in W8 that I was still learning, but I was comfortable. I'd done all the sections, and I wasn't ready to leave because I was still learning. But, I wasn't dreading going to work every day, and I wasn't scared that I wasn't going to get things done. I knew I was going to get my jobs done. So I think, as soon as you become comfortable, you're in a bit of a danger zone where you can become a bit complacent. So, I decided it was the right time to do it. And there was a little bit of a trigger in that the restaurant just gets an email saying, do you have any chefs that would like to apply for MasterChef? And I was like, oh, well, I guess it's some kind of sign.
Yeah.
So I really, honestly, I applied 10 p.m. before the deadline because I was so on the fence about it still.
Right.
I had the application ready for weeks and then I pressed submit 10 p.m. before the deadline. And I got a call the next day.
Wow. God, they don't hang around.
Literally, she was like, "Hi, this is blah blah from Shine TV." And I was in the kitchen like, "Oh, okay,
Hello.
hang on. I just need to go outside." And as soon as I told my chef, he was so encouraging. He was definitely trying to manage my expectations a little bit because, as anyone who cares about someone would do,
Yeah.
but also, completely encouraging. He's like, "I'm very excited about it."
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's great exposure for you, but it's great exposure for them too, because you're at that point you're, I suppose, a product of their development, as it were, as well. Notwithstanding all of the other stuff that you've done to this point, of course. But yeah, so this is one of the joys of this competition for me as well, is that at this point in time you're a CDP. Equally you could be up against 12 head chefs. It doesn't, the competition doesn't discriminate against level.
Exactly.
It's about finding super talent, basically, and that can exist within somebody at any stage of their career.
Yeah, like Great British Baking is amazing, but you can't apply for it really as a junior level chef. It's not. I think you sort of would be out of your depth because everyone there are almost chef owners.
Yeah.
They have Michelin stars. Like Masterchef felt a lot more accessible, and so yeah, I applied. I got through, and
so what happens?
Like, oh,
you do an application. Do you have to do I assume you have to do a cook-off and probably an interview or something like that.
Everyone thinks this. Everyone thinks this. There was an interview. There was sort of screen like test, but the first time you cook is the skills test.
Really?
The first time you cook, the first time you meet the judges, everything, it's so real. That's why everyone's like, why do they look so surprised when they walk in? Because we are. Because it's like, it's quite overwhelming when you walk into that room for the first time. It's literally the first time you've seen the judges. And
oh my God, Marcus Waring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't know who you're going to get. It's usually one of them, the other's in the back. So you're like, oh.
Yeah, indeed. Well, and then of course, blind tests. Could be something that you have absolutely zero knowledge in.
Yes, one of the most intimidating rounds because you don't know the kitchen. You don't know what you're going to get. There's a little bit like when you think about it logically, you know that you're not going to go out based on this round, but that doesn't make it easier.
No,
you know in your brain like you should just relax because it doesn't necessarily, it's not the be all and end all, but still you're just so overwhelmed by everything. They give you a little rundown as soon as you walk in, like, here are the bowls, here are the knives, here are the things.
Yeah,
like
go.
In one ear, out the other. Like, yeah. I started and I'm like, where are the bowls?
Yeah. What's this big metal thing with a stick? Oh, it's a pan. Right, yeah.
Yeah. And you see chefs absolutely crumble. And I understand why. It's really just a whole different, you're a fish out of water. It's something else.
Yeah. So, and fast forward a little bit through the competition, was there a point in the competition where you obviously kept advancing? Was there a point where you started to think, I'm in with a shout here? Or was it always, do you always kind of stay humble to the moment that at any point in time you could have a test, a creativity test or whatever, that actually just, where you just have a meltdown, because it can happen, right, to anyone.
Yeah. So my goal when I entered was I wanted to cook for the critics and get through so that I know that they liked it.
Right.
Essentially, I wanted to cook for the critics and for them to love it. And so after that round, I think I relaxed a little bit with myself because I hadn't made a fool of myself. I had just relaxed a little bit. But the fire doesn't go. It then it keeps on going to the next round and then the next round. It wasn't until maybe final four that I was like, okay, I really want to win now. Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as you go through a round, it's okay, like on to the next one. And that's where I knew I was competitive, but that really brought out of me. And also once I got to a point, my chef and my family stopped managing my expectations, and they were like, just go and win this thing, like just do it. You're here now. Like, come on,
you made it this far.
You can do it.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's hilarious though. But I suppose that, you know, that's the protection mechanism, isn't it, to make sure that you're not getting carried away, that you're not believing your own press, that you're staying true to yourself and humble and just being who you are and going out and doing your best every time, and not ever thinking that, you know, you're the one. But I mean, the finals week is a hell of an experience to watch, let alone to experience. So yeah, talk us through that finals week, because I'm guessing there was the moment where they call your name and you're through to finals week, where you kind of just go, oh my God.
But I think I had that feeling for every single time I was called through.
Really? Right.
You had the same feeling, and you learn about the quirks that you do from watching yourself on TV. It's a little bit grating to see, but
it's the same the first time you hear your voice on a podcast, by the way.
Oh yeah. I might not listen to all of it. I put my hands on my face every time like something good happens. Apparently, I had no idea. But the feeling was just incredible, and I think it's finals week is the first time they like bring you a glass of champagne to celebrate.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, by the time we got to that point, final 10, we started to know each other so well.
Yeah.
So it was heartbreaking, genuinely, and watching it back especially was heartbreaking, because it's really all about the day. Everyone is as talented as each other in that final 10. It just comes down to the day and what happens. And for some people, it just, you know, something went so horribly wrong, but had they executed that dish perfectly, it would have been a no-brainer. They would have been through.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, but it is sort of like, first time it happens, you're like, yay, and then immediately you hear who's not going through, and then your heart breaks.
Yeah, and that comes across actually in watching the show, is that I think it also highlights the beauty of hospitality, because I think even though you're in a role for all intents and purposes, which is kind of behind the scenes and the public never get to see, there's still an awful lot of people in kitchens, and you know, and so when you get a moment whereby you can't help but build bonds because you're going through the same experience together, you know,
we're the only people that understand what we're going through.
Yeah,
it's such a tight-knit group.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally imagine how it's like this double-edged sword of, you know, yes, I'm through, and then, oh God, they've gone. I love them. I love their food. And of course you want to win, but you obviously, I think everybody at that point just wants to see everybody do well. But also it's a mark of yourself, right? I mean, you want to produce your best against the best of other people as well. And when you come out on top in that environment, and consistency is a massive part of being your best, right, as well. And that's ultimately what wins in the end, is being strong and consistent rather than just being strong occasionally. And and that's just from a consumer's perspective watching the show. That's my view. I don't profess to be the
that's
font
how
of all
I
knowledge.
Feel that the way I feel that I won is that I practiced every single thing countless times. There was not a round I went into unpracticed or not knowing what I was doing. Everything was practiced to the point that I was, 8 minutes under the time limit, so that allows for the talk time.
Right. Very good. Yeah. We watched the show, and every time, like, Greg will come over or whatever and start talking to you about your food, and my wife and I will look at each other and go, "Will you shut up and just let them get on with it?"
Genuinely, and you learn that you should just stop what you're doing and talk to them, because it will make it go quicker.
Yeah.
If you try to continue working, then like the whole thing just takes a lot longer.
Right.
So you learn little things like that. But I definitely had to take it into account when I was practicing, because you have an hour and 30 minutes, but really you have an hour and 20 minutes, because there is going to be that talk time.
Yeah. Well, good lessons for any future potential Masterchef contestants there.
They tell you that,
okay, right.
to take it into consideration. finals was, once you get there though, in a sense you're content because you've done so well. Anyone who gets to that stage has done so well, but the fire doesn't go.
Well, it probably only gets stronger, doesn't it? Because you're
Yeah,
so close now.
it's so close. Yeah, absolutely. And then the rounds become really rewarding, like the chef's table. Everyone wants to do that. When I used to watch the show and I'd see chefs cooking for the chef's table, and I thought, that must just be the most incredible
Pinnacle.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just like a who's who, isn't it, of British cuisine.
You don't know where to look.
No,
sort of thrown into this room,
and then somebody will. I love how they put their hand up and they'll say like Daniel Clifford's Midsummer House, like nobody knows,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, wonderful. And then got obviously down to the final day, the final cook, and you won. So yeah, describe the feeling in that moment. I mean, can you even describe it? It's because you're going back however many months beforehand to be swithering on whether to put your application in or not, and leaving it till the very last minute. Like, I mean, just imagine if you hadn't.
I know. I mean, I can't describe it because it was like, okay, I can't have done more. This is it. I couldn't believe it was over because it'd been like 3 months of my life. And then they handed me this big metal M and I was like, okay, now what? Now I guess I keep it secret for like 4 months.
Oh, is that the lag? Yeah. No, yeah. I suppose that must be a nightmare because you just want to tell everyone, I guess, as well.
It's also was really fun, like pretending that I'm like, oh, next episode's really, really going to be tough for me.
Right.
But knowing that they're all going to be watching, like nail biting, but in the end, it's all going to be great. And I mean, it doesn't feel real for the next few months because you can't tell anyone. No one knows. You don't have the trophy. They send it to you when it airs because you could ruin it for everyone. But I can't describe the feeling. I still can't. I definitely get like imposter syndrome. Like how is this mine? I still get it.
Yeah, bless. Yeah, well, huge congratulations. It was a hell of a journey. I mean, it always is, but it's always you as a viewer, you bond with the people that you're watching, even though you don't know them at all. And there's still this moment whereby the person who you want to win, when they win, it's like celebrating your football team just scored a goal. It's like I'm up and standing up and punching the air. It was just a real joy to watch you kind of evolve and progress as well. And now, I suppose on the back of the show, your life must have just gone a little bit nuts.
Yeah, so I mean, after the sort of filming, I was in line sort of for a promotion anyway. It actually probably got postponed because of Masterchef and I wasn't able to be at work. But I got promoted to Junior Sous Chef. But having said that, I knew that come December, my world was going to change quite dramatically. And as much as I love the restaurant, I wanted to start to serve people food that I've not just cooked, but dishes that are mine.
Yeah.
So in July, I said, come New Year, I think I have to finish, which broke my heart, but it's his own fault because he's a really good teacher. So that's what I told him.
That's a wonderful message.
if you want people to stay.
Yeah. No, but I'm sure he you leave with his blessing, because you're a product of his teachings, basically, and that must make him very happy, I think.
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
I'll get him on the show and we can talk about that and see what he says.
Since then I've just been doing events and pop-ups, which it's amazing because I served food on MasterChef And that was the first time I sat down and actually created dishes. You know, I'd cook at home and experiment, but it was the first time I didn't. I had maybe 4 dishes when I applied, and by the time you finish, you have like 18 dishes that that have to be MasterChef worthy. They're not just sort of any dish. They're dishes that you become really proud of.
Yeah.
And so then serving that to the public for the first time, because we have different palates, you know, chefs and the public, and so you sort of have to. It was really nerve-wracking that first time, because what if I don't know. I think I still didn't quite believe that everyone else would also like it. But since then, I've been doing a lot of them, and it's the most rewarding thing. And it's why I'm a chef, is because I like to watch people enjoy eating my food. I think that's a lot of chefs.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sometimes we overthink why people do stuff, right? But actually, usually it's the simplest reasons as to why something makes you tick. And there's absolutely, what better way to become a chef than actually just take joy in watching people enjoy what you produce for them.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of them are sort of open kitchens, and because of MasterChef, they want to, you know, talk. I have to go and sort of talk to people, but it's really rewarding and lovely listening to people who sort of think that they know me from watching the journey, and they get really excited if I do a dish from MasterChef, and that's just it's just something so rewarding that I've never experienced before.
It's the great thing, actually, of one of the great things of that show is that you and I did a little cheeky event together at HRC a couple of months ago, and when you arrived into the Chef HQ area that we were in, it did feel like I knew you. You know, even though we've never met before in our lives, and that is the one of the joys of it, is that it really does give people a window into you as a human, as well as who you are as a chef. And then and that comes across really well on screen, I think. And certainly you absolutely aced that demo that we did. That I say we demo you did that that I was just happened to be comparing. But yeah, and that was your first experience of doing a demo as well, as I recall.
I think I did 2 that weekend, and they were my first 2 ever.
Right.
So it was quite thrown into the deep end, because that's another skill that I'm still learning. And so it was very helpful to have you as my compare.
Bless.
Sort of help me along.
I'd never done it before either, so.
Oh, you didn't tell me that at the time.
No, well, you know, there's enough nerves going through the body, isn't there, at the time when you've got to get up in front of people and cook to your heart's your best ability. I ended up having to jump on the pans with Tom Phillips of Restaurant Story, because we were gassing too much, and we ran out of time. So yeah, it was a really great experience, that event, and it was absolutely wonderful to have you there as well. And you were doing that in collaboration with Scottish seafood, or Norwegian seafood. It was
Norwegian seafood, yeah.
Yes.
So they invited me on a trip to Norway, along with Michelin Junior, and a lot of the chefs from Young National Chef of the Year are winners.
Right.
So that was just a really cool trip, and they were just promoting Norwegian seafood, which is really beautiful, and they have so much of it, so we should definitely be using it.
Yeah.
And we got to go fishing. We went on snowmobiles.
It's not that far away, is it, really?
It was a very cool experience, and getting to hang out with all of the chefs was just a really good time.
Yeah, fantastic. And, you know, a wonderful byproduct of the competition as well, right? In terms of just all these other extra little experiences that you get that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily get the opportunity to do something like that.
Definitely being able to go on trips, and also like the demos, that's such a interesting experience, and you learn a lot from talking to the people there, like meeting people like yourself. All of these things, you learn different skills, and it's something that I've never would have done otherwise.
Fantastic. What's next? I mean, I suppose you're, as you say, you're got your head in a few different things at the moment, and just kind of, I suppose, riding this wonderful positive wave that you're on at the moment with regards to your cooking and getting your cooking out into the world and letting people see it.
Yeah, definitely. So this year, I'm really enjoying the opportunities sort of being thrown at me. So events, a few private dinners, food festivals, all of that sort of stuff. I did a longer residency just for a week at Grace and Save, and that was amazing because I was able to sort of, it wasn't just a day, I was able to sort of dig my feet in and really make the most of that. And then I think probably in the new year, I'll look into settling somewhere a little bit more permanent. My goal is to have a restaurant, so everything I do is going to be in aid of that.
Got you. So if there's any investors listening out there, get in contact. No, that's great. There's a couple of questions I just want to ask quickly before I let you get on with your day down in lovely Cornwall. Really centered around, I mean, this is a podcast that really cares deeply about hospitality, and I can't speak highly enough of the industry. What 3 reasons would you give to somebody as to why they should come and join hospitality?
I think if you love people, if you love interacting with people, you get so many rewarding interactions with people from working in this industry. You learn a lot about hard work, but in a really positive way, because there's always a reward which comes with that hard work. And then I think the people in the industry that you meet, you really become such a tight-knit family, and build such great relationships with them. And that's just a wonderful thing. Yeah,
couldn't agree more. Fantastic. Final question, which is very simply, if people want to learn more about you, if they're unfamiliar with somehow who you are from everything that's gone on in the last few months, where should people look out for you?
So definitely my social, so Instagram, and then I have a website, chefnikita.com, and all of my events and the things that I'm doing go up on there. So if you want to come and eat my food, there'll definitely be something on there where you can go.
Fantastic. Nikita, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's been a real delight to meet you this year and get to know you a little bit better. And your journey is really, really interesting. In many ways, I suppose it really starts now. And so I can't wait to see what you get up to going forward, and wish you all the very best with the next phase, whatever that looks like.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Fantastic. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And there we have it. It was fab to get some time with Nikita, and I think she demonstrates what is possible when you have ambition and passion. I, for one, cannot wait to see what she gets up to next. We'll be back as usual at 8 p.m. next Wednesday for another story from hospitality, so until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.